But in Japan, we see the rabbit on the moon. So I'm going to tell you a little story about how the rabbit got to be on the moon. So the story is there was a man in the moon, and he came down, he disguised himself as a beggar. He says, I'm going to find out which is the most kind and generous of animals. And he saw a monkey, a fox, and a rabbit. And so he said, oh, I'm a beggar and I'm so hungry. And the monkey said, oh, I'll go get you some fruit. So he ran off and he got him some fruit and he brought the fruit back. The fox ran off and he brought him back a fish. And the rabbit just was jumping all around and he just couldn't find anything. And he said, oh, Mr. Monkey, will you find me some wood? And Mr. Fox, will you build me a fire? And so they did. And so he said, kind beggar, I'm so sorry, I just couldn't find you any food. So this fire is now hot enough and I'm going to jump in it and roast myself and then you can eat me and then you'll be fed. And the beggar threw off his cloak and he said, no, Mr. Rabbit, you are the kindest and most sacrificial of animals. And because of this, I'm going to honor you and I'm going to take you up with me to the moon. And from now on, everyone, when they look at the moon, they will see the rabbit in the moon.
We have a full moon. Sure. But in Chinese culture, the August full moon is special.
Yeah.
That is almost identical to United States Thanksgiving.
Okay.
It's about reunion. It's about family.
Nice.
You know, it's about your ancestors and all your kids and say something special to your family. So the mooncake, they have developed so many different varieties. For example, in Beijing, this is kind of what we eat in Beijing. There are different flavors. You know, for example, there are 5 nuts. There are bean paste.
Right.
There are all kind of different flavors. But in Hong Kong or Cantonese, they put a yolk in the center. I don't know. This one may have a yolk because they develop a flavor fit for everyone.
Nice.
And Taiwan has a different kind. Shanghai has different kind. So we're supposed to slice it to different pieces, so everybody share the same mooncake. Right. Because it has a lot of sweetness, and you don't eat a whole full cake by yourself.
You're supposed to
share. So that is the idea that we share as a whole family or a whole community, a whole organization.
Well, thank you, Lily, for bringing this. I bought in Japan, of course, it's the rabbit on the moon. In America, you think of rabbits and you think of Easter, spring, but in Japan, it's the autumn. The rabbit is all about the autumn. And then I used to quilt an applique, so I took a furoshiki that I have over there, and I cut it apart and I appliqued a kimono out of it. So this is a rabbit on the moon kimono. Sweet. Yeah, so I made that for my mother back in Japan. So I learned a lot about hydrangeas. I've always had difficulty with hydrangeas because they tend to wilt. Does anybody else have that issue? Yes. So what I've learned is that if you remove a lot of the excess foliage, even though it's voluptuous, it's beautiful, it's veined, it really looks nice, it needs a lot of hydration. And so you want to take off all of the big foliage off of the head. You can leave on the little tiny ones, but take off the big ones because they need hydration as well as the petals do. Now, if you find it goes like this, you can submerge the whole flower and the stem and give it a fresh cut at 45-degree angle and submerge it, baptize it, if you will, in the water and put a plate or a cup or something on it so it doesn't float up and let it submerge for 24 to 36 hours. And when you're done, you'll find it'll be just like this again, all fresh and hydrated. You can do that up to maybe...
submerge the flower?
Push the whole flower and everything all down in the water. You'll find that you can do that about dip the stem into really hot water. Hot like, not quite boiling, but hot water. And that will help to loosen up whatever gunk is in the stem and help it hydrate better. So that's one tip. The other tip is to mist it regularly. When you mist it, be sure you're not doing it on a good wooden table so that you don't ruin your wood. Put a piece of plastic or cloth or something underneath to catch the drips and make sure there's nothing dripping down, but hydrate it with some mist. The other thing you can do is you can take alum, which is a pickling powder found in the baking aisle of the grocery store. You can cut the stem 45-degree angle at the bottom and then dip it in a little water, and then dip the tip into the alum, and then put it into your Kenzon. And it's supposed to help it stay longer. So I've been using the alum. Some other ways to keep bacteria, because they're bacteria prone, one good thing is to clean all of your bowl, your cutters, and to put your Kenzon, run it through the dishwasher cycle once, just to get bacteria free. You can also take an eyedropper and drop in, once you're all finished and you're set to go, a drop or two of chlorine to help clean up the water. I got online and I found a recipe from Martha Stewart. It's 2 gallons of water, 2 cups of Caro corn syrup, 4 tablespoons of white vinegar, and 4 tablespoons of liquid bleach. And you can keep that and then fill up the water as needed to hydrate the plant and actually energize the plant with the sugars that are in that solution. Or I found a second recipe that calls for 1 quart of water, 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, 1 tablespoon of sugar, and half a teaspoon of bleach. And the lemon juice or the vinegar gives acidity. The sugar gives the nutrition, and the bleach cleanses. So in either of those recipes, it would help. Normally in Ikebana, I don't recommend using any flower food or plant food or anything to help the flowers along. Usually just the plain water in a clean bowl will be all that. Or the Miscanthus grass. You want to pick the biggest, strongest, tallest stem, and that's going to be our tie. And you're going to measure, if you have a pretty good sized bowl, 2 times the width and 1 time the height. If you're working in a rather small bowl, you can triple the size of the width and double the size of the height to get the drama that you need for such a large jumbo hydrangea bloom, because it's just really large. So today we're going to use the Miscanthus, put that in first, get heaven in first, about 2/3 from the back in a row. We're going to put them in a row in the center, and then tilt it to the side. Then you're going to put man in, man's made in God's image, but not God. And this should come up to the next joint where the tassel is starting to go. So then you put man in off to the side. We're made in God's image, but not God. Then the very last one, you may find that the piece you have, you might say, oh, there's nothing in there. But if you take your fingernails, you can find in the little sheaves of the grass, you can pull it apart and there will be another tassel in there, and that's going to be the small baby when you put it in the back. Because it's so large, we're going to place it at the third, you're going to put it in third. So the top of the flower should be at the top of the third line point in the arrangement. Then you'll have Monte Cassino asters. You'll want to strip off all of the big foliage, because any foliage that's on a Monte Cassino with little tiny buds, it's going to take the strength away from the bud opening. So take off very carefully take off all those leaves, not the little tiny leaves, just the big leaves. And you'll find that the buds will open up. You'll put the bigger one here behind it, and then maybe one in the back and one off to the side. But this is to just kind of balance out all of what's going on here with the hydrangea. And lastly, you're going to add in the foliage, because we've stripped off the big, beautiful, voluptuous leaves from the hydrangea. Now we've got to replace the foliage, and we're using Salal leaves to do that. So it's a very simple design with Miscanthus, hydrangea, asters, and Salal, and it looks like an autumn zucchini moon viewing arrangement. In your hand, and then just pull off, and you won't be pulling off the flower. And you just keep rotating around and just keep sliding your finger down on the ones you're holding.